Black Magic Woman podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on. We also acknowledge traditional owners of the land where you, the listener or viewer, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to our elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was Aboriginal land and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bales.
Welcome to another deadly episode of the one and only Black Magic Woman podcast. Hopefully you've been enjoying the journey so far, either viewing it on the YouTube channel. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the Black Magic Woman YouTube, please go and do so. And share with your family and friends, and even in your organisations, in the networks, the boards that you sit on, the jobs that you do. If you really enjoy hearing from some of the guests that I have on the couch or virtually, then share it with other people, because that's what it's all about. How do we get our stories out there to the rest of the world? And talking about being on the other side of the country, I feel like I'm in another world. I travelled nearly 6 hours to be here on beautiful Whadjak Noongar Country, which is Western Australia, but in particular Perth. So I'm joined by, or I would say I have the absolute privilege to be in the amazing presence of Auntie Pat Dudgeon. And I had to say straight away when I met you downstairs in the foyer that Aunt Lilla, as soon as I mentioned that I was coming to yarn with you, she said, you must send her my love and regards. And she's got some very fond memories.
Darling.
Of, the early days, the old days.
And absolutely sending it back to Lilla. I mean, she's she's actually a trailblazer, but I don't know if many people know that. But in our programs that we were doing at Curtin University at the time, and we were doing some really different things and trying to change higher education so it would suit our communities. And she was the first one who came up with the term Aboriginal terms of reference. And that's before we had all that language, decolonising the paradigms and Western hegemony, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But she was actually doing that.
What year? How far are we going back?
This is going back a long way. In
1970s?
1990s we started doing these programs.
So in the 1980s is when she got the job as an academic at UQ. So that's where the university, your friendship goes back.
Yeah, back to that. And actually that became a big stream in our community management program, which as far as I know is still operating. So Aboriginal terms of reference was actually a big stream. But she broke that ground. She was a pioneer way before we had the language that we have now. The landscape, particularly in higher education, is very different and better for us. But before we were always on the outside, being blocked out, being capped out.
Yeah.
So
and having to participate in these institutions on white terms of reference.
Yes, and Western knowledges. No one spoke up Indigenous knowledges or the respect and inclusion of that. And that's a discussion that's taking place nationally amongst our Indigenous scholars and community people. And it's a good change that's happening. And it's global too. So I must credit Lilla as being one of the pioneers in the academy to start challenging the Western ways and say, no, there's got to be an Aboriginal way. What's important? What's our aspirations and values, and what's important for us as an Indigenous group?
And to hold it or to see it as equal or higher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To place the value of our knowledge, our cultural knowledge that comes from this land at either equal to white man's knowledge or Western qualifications,
or better in
like you said,
what are you going to do a mainstream business degree and then go and work out in the community? It's like irrelevant. So but if you learned about what was important for Aboriginal people, all the different protocols, different ways of working, values, aspirations, relationship building, that was more relevant. And that was the big change. I think we had been working working in mainstream in the academy, but and trying to modify Western knowledges. But you almost have to start brand new and develop your own knowledges.
Yeah, you're speaking a different language. Or that language is not even. It's not understood.
Yeah, that's right.
In those academies and institutions that are very white.
Yes. And now it's like, some universities actually have professors of Indigenous knowledges.
And they do that. They have
quantum leap.
Even pro-vice chancellors.
I know.
Look
that's
out.
Good, eh?
Our mob is stepping up.
Change is happening. More, we have to keep the pedal to the floor because there's still, entrenched systemic racism and cultural racism. But now there's a path forward, or many paths forward, and we're all together on it. So I'm feeling optimistic.
Too deadly. We look how exciting it is to be sitting here and yarning with you, Aunt. I've been reading your work.
Cool.
I've been following you on LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of yours.
Oh, okay. I'm always on there.
Yeah, absolutely love everything you do, and I share every single post of yours.
Oh, deadly.
And I feel a sense of obligation that if I've got a network and I've got a profile or platform or following, then we need to make sure that, that we're using it. And I'm not saying that everyone with a high profile or public profile needs to go and fly the flag. Well, you should be doing it anyways. But we're not here to judge anyone. But coming back to your beautiful people and country and family, which is a big part of who we are as black fellas, do you want to share with our listeners and also our viewers on YouTube a little bit about your country, your people?
Okay, well, a little bit about me. I was actually born and grew up in Darwin, and I say, and I feel that a part of my heart belongs to Larrakia Nation. So that's where I was born and grew up. My people actually are from the Kimberly, so I'm from the Bardi Gidja people. However, growing up in Darwin, there was a bit of a beat that happened. There was a lot of travel between Darwin and Broome. So that's how I think my mother and my grandmother ended up in Darwin, and was definitely a part of the Aboriginal community in Darwin. But when I wanted to study psychology because I wanted to help people. And at that time, which is telling, there were no universities in Darwin, so I had to go down south. And so I thought Brisbane, Perth, and chose Perth. And I came here to study psychology. So that's back some time. And I just love Noongar Budja. I love Perth and Noongar Country. And I do the odd trip back to Darwin, but I mainly go back to Broome to reconnect there where my mob are from. But I'd call Perth, Noongar Budja, my home.
I love that. And it's, one of the most beautifulest things. There's a lot of beautiful things about our culture, but we can actually be welcomed and accepted on other people's country.
Absolutely.
Like we're being taken in by the local mob.
Yes.
But know what? We white fellas can feel that too.
Yes.
If they really wanted to make a difference, or if they wanted to better themselves and their own spirit, right? How amazing would it be, especially for non-Aboriginal people, to connect with the local mob, and then they will also feel the same feelings that we start to feel on other mob's country.
A much richer experience. I mean, it's about having some protocols and respect. And,
so you got to learn that first.
Knowing your place a little bit. Like, there's, while I live and I see myself as a part of the community here, I know that there's things and places I can't be in. And I think that's good. I'm not a Noongar. I'm a Bardi person. So it's knowing your boundaries, and not to, for all of us, wherever we go, and we go into other people's countries, whether, obviously mainly Indigenous, but also non-Indigenous, I think it's important that we do learn the culture of the place and the people, and we respect those people and their culture and history. So it's a basic protocol that we all should observe. The spaces we go into aren't disposable. They're not superficial, or they don't have to be. They could be deep, rich stories that we we can hear, be a part of, and respect. So I think that that if you go to a place, when I go overseas, I try and find out about wherever I'm going. Whether I've been to South Africa, for instance, and I did a lot of reading on the history and the cultural groups that make up that country, etc., etc. So it's a much more deeper experience, and hopefully I'm not as culturally ignorant when I go in there, and I don't offend anyone too. So I was very conscious about that, and
especially as a cultured person.
Yes,
you kind of already got a foot in the door, so to speak, being a cultured person. Because some of those principles and protocols, they're universal.
Yes, and it's about, being respectful, knowing what the values are or the ways of operating are, and ensuring that you observe them.
Yeah, it could be women with women, like our culture. Women's business, men's business. It could be the fact that you dress modest and don't show, your chest, your susus.
So,
and in some of our Aboriginal communities, and people don't know this, but when I went to the Garma Festival in Arnhem Land in Yirrakala, the people that I went with did not know that it was actually inappropriate to wear skirts and shorts as females, that they should have pants or baggy pants or long skirts or even put a sarong on, right? So when I was going, my family's here, I better, put long skirt on, the other women that were Miglu women, Whadjak women, white fellas, non-Aboriginal women, were like, should we be having a long skirt? And I said, well, yeah. And they said, why weren't we told? Same time, why didn't you do some research?
Yeah, and also look around, read the room.
Before you get to the room, before you get to South Africa, before you get to another country, and it might be within Australia. There's all these different countries that make up this great island continent of ours.
Yeah, and I think communities are pretty forgiving, so they're generous. But if you flaunt things, or if you are flaunting the protocols and you don't want to see or hear them, then it's an issue. But if you make a mistake, I think that that's accepted and you won't be penalised. But if you're disrespectful, that's a different story, isn't it?
Yeah, you'll be asked to leave.
Yes.
And you won't be invited to come back. In terms of working with communities, you've been doing a lot of work in this country, and like psychology is your forte.
Yes, that's right. So, and we've been trying to, I think mental health, I know when I was studying and when I graduated, I think the way forward for us as Indigenous people was seen as achieving economic independence, and then health was a big issue. There was a lot of attention and some funding put into that. I couldn't see where psychology fit at the time, and I know that the psychology. I was trying to work within the paradigm, but you had to step out of it. And it was actually African American psychology, black psychology, that showed me that okay, these are the models and theories of a white Western psychology. We have to step out and develop our own. So that was a bit of a epiphany for me. That made took me. That was quite a change. And rather than being for me and different people will have different experiences. Some Aboriginal psychs might be quite happy working in mainstream and just adapting mainstream approaches, and that's good for them, and if it's useful to our people, good. But what suited me as a person is that to step outside and challenge those
frameworks, paradigms.
Yeah. So and then at that time when the Ways Forward report came out, and that was fantastic. So that was led by Pat Swan or Delaney and Beverly Raphael, and that was the first time we really looked at mental health of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. And then the first SUB framework, the social emotional wellbeing framework, came out, and that shone a light on how we could go. So with the Indigenous psychologists, we've worked to develop a diagram from that history, and that's promoting a social emotional wellbeing approach, which is it's still about you, it's still about a self, but a relational self, not self, contained. But
in terms of self, like the individuality or individualism, not that self.
Yeah, it's a collective self, and it's
holistic.
Yeah, holistic. And SEWB is about you and your connection to your family, to your community. It's about your mind and body as well, that, our well-being, you should have a good physical environment. You should be having a good diet, not drinking or smoking too much, doing exercising, blah, blah, blah. So it's your physical self, your mental self, where your emotional self, where you can regulate your emotions and navigate out of issues and feel like you've got some mastery over life.
Self-control,
self-control and wisdom. But then there's also connection to your family, community, and your country. So those are important elements of SEWB, or wellbeing for Indigenous people, and the other connections that are important. And these all overlap, incidentally.
Yeah, of
They're
course.
not little slices.
They all connect.
The diagram is like a pizza with different slices. The reality is that it's all sort of mixed up. Yep. But it's our connection. Country is very important. Earlier we spoke about, where we come from in terms of country and where we feel connected to. So that's very important for Aboriginal people, and connection to our ancestors and our spirituality. So those are important elements that need to be addressed if you take a social emotional wellbeing approach. But the community loves it, because I think the good thing about the diagram, and again, it wasn't us, we put that comes from a big history, and we stand on the shoulders of that. But we did the diagram, and that made it simple for our mob to grab hold of
to start to understand.
Yeah, that your well-being isn't just mental health; it's all those things. All those
parts play a role.
They're all important.
What did I say? All intrinsic. I'm trying to think of these English words too. Now you got me. Interconnected.
Yeah, interconnected.
It's all
and
interconnected.
Important, and they all overlap. Yeah. And different people will have different priorities during their life course,
of course,
and depending on what's happening in their life. But and we've been working with some of the Aboriginal Medical Service, or the ARCHOs,
yeah,
to look at, well, what is a good social emotional wellbeing service, and if you go and see a doctor, what other things do they need to consider, and do we have services that help people connect back to family, community, country, and so on, and what are cultural activities that connect people back to their culture as well. So this movement that and maybe I'm getting all excited and seeing it as bigger than it is, but I think it's fabulous. And there's other models. This is just one of them. Professor Helen Milroy, who's an Aboriginal psychiatrist, she's got a model called the Dance of Life, and that talks about what elements are important to well-being as well, and all the little all the therapies that are happening as well. So we're seeing that emerge, that Indigenous knowledge, and people reclaiming that Indigenous knowledge. So healing, for instance, isn't just talk. It's just not. It should include and be a part of talking therapy, but it might be going back to country and reconnecting, back to country and being in the country, and the healing elements of it.
That, country will heal us. Country knows our spirit, especially if that's your country.
Yes, so
there's magic in that.
Yes, indeed, and I'm seeing too is the ceremonies and starting to happen again. I just noticed this morning on Facebook that there's a big men's gathering happening here in Perth, and that's fabulous to see those things being advertised. And they're doing a call out saying, "Hey, local men, are you interested? Come out, join this men's group. We're going out to country," and it's getting people on country and talking about what's important to us as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people that makes us stronger. We connect with our own mob even stronger, but then we can have those serious conversations too. And I think we're just much better off. We're much healthier. We're more centered and happier because of it.
Of course. That's what's so important about blackfellas, being able to guide, enforce, develop policies.
Yes.
Give feedback.
Yeah.
We're on the ground, especially if you've grown up in your Aboriginal family and community. It's our lived experience that helps us, guide or develop these frameworks. So we know what we need to do. We're the best people to solve some of the challenges in our community. And Aunt Lila talks about this all the time, about how blackfellas have got this great understanding of what it means to be human. So psychology is our forte.
Yes, it is.
We understand, but we've gained or developed this understanding over thousands, tens of thousands of years.
Yes,
and so we know about being human.
Yes, and surviving colonisation, for instance.
Yeah.
But and that's starting to happen in the policy area. We've got some fabulous organisations like Guy Dewey Proud Spirit. They're our peak mental health SEWB suicide prevention body, which I'm on their board. So I'm giving them a shout out.
Big shout out to you, Mom.
Yeah,
what about Upstart? Gregory,
Gregory
Phillips.
Oh, he's doing fabulous stuff.
Oh, look, big fabulous fan. Gregory knows it.
To Gregory.
We love you, Gregory. Annie Lila loves you and Annie Mary loves you.
Yeah. Oh,
Annie Pat.
Yeah, and there's that.
You've been doing some work with Gregory. I heard from somebody. Yeah, you were doing something with the psychology boards or some university stuff.
Greg's worked with us, and this is amongst all these great policy changes that are happening right now, and the emergence of Guy Dewey Proud Spirit, the Indigenous Psychologists Association, and so on. But Greg worked with us when we started looking at because that's my interest area. Although it's generalisable, it could go into social work, wherever. We started this project where we looked at changing psychology curriculum, or to the discipline rather, and it was about we needed to increase the number of Indigenous psychs that went into psychology.
How many do we have?
Oh, look, there's about 300, I'd
300?
say, easy. There's easily 300, but I think there should be more. If we did that parity, the stats where if we're 3% of the population, what should our numbers be? We need over 1,000. But we've got this big project happening, which Greg was a part of, and we did at the time it was a bit of a hostile environment, but we produced these big reports or frameworks on how to increase the number of Indigenous students, how to indigenise your curriculum, because regardless of how many students we get in, I feel that mainstream psychologists need to be more culturally aware or responsive because they'll be seeing our people.
Do they have obligations or?
Yes.
Is there something within their accreditation or membership?
Yes, that's happening. With the after that first stage of that project, the accreditation changed to include a bit of a vague cultural responsiveness. So I think that was the start of it. Then we started this other research project, and we revived we call it the Australian Indigenous Psychology Education Project, and that has just gone again. It's an environment, because I thought, we might get a few people interested, and we can have our talks and write the odd paper and meet up at conferences and whatnot. But I was overwhelmed by the response. It's been amazing. So there's a Noongar psychologist, Belle Selkirk, who heads the project with another researcher, and they pretty well look after it all. But out of all the psych schools in Australia, I think there's 36, I think 28 or 9 have signed up to be a part of the project. So they meet monthly. They've got a community of practice. So things are changing. You know, we've got this research project happening called Transforming Indigenous Mental Health and Wellbeing, and that's exciting. So that does a number of different projects. The Australian Indigenous Psychology Education Project is one of our projects, but Professor Helen Milroy, our first Indigenous psychiatrist, is a part of it, and she's looking at cultural responsiveness within the mental health area, but also the role of traditional or cultural healers. So we have a partnership with NPY. I won't try and say that name, but with the Ngungri healers. So we're looking at everything. So we're doing, building up our own models, but also cultural responsiveness across the board. And so that's really exciting. I wish it moves slow, because our way too is that we don't sit in the ivory tower and do work on our own. We actually work with communities.
And that will happen when it happens,
Yeah, so that you've got to build in time for that, but I could never not do that, speak on behalf of our people without their involvement. So we work very closely with
community,
with the appropriate people and with community. Nacho's a partner on that grant as well. So I'm comfortable about that. And our approach to research, well, mine is, in any case, is Aboriginal participatory action research, where we are anti-colonial, we are a bit political, because that's the space that we as Indigenous people occupy, and it's about inclusiveness, moving with our own mob and making positive social change.
And Arnie, you are on TikTok.
Yes.
Arnie's got a TikTok account.
Yes.
Called.
Okay, there's one of our, after the referendum, and I don't need to go into that, how devastated we all were from that. Us older ones, we thought, when it was looking like it would be a no, we thought, we can deal with this. We've been around and been disappointed, but it did have an impact that I didn't expect. But when it all happened, my thoughts went out to our youth and our allies. So we were really worried about the youth, our suicide rates and so on. Part of that is because of the systemic racism and exclusion from society. So I was really concerned about youth, because that no vote basically said that, we weren't worthy to be included into the Constitution. So I know there's a whole bunch of different initiatives that will start to look after our youth, but we thought, hey, let's get some positive messaging out. And we figure that youth live in TikTok. They are, unlike us who like looking at Facebook, they probably have a quick look, but that's where most Aboriginal youth are, and they're doing some fabulous work too. So we started this TikTok called Auntie TJ, and that's Talamini Maya, who's a Noongar elder from Perth, and we brought her out of retirement, and she's been doing these amazing TikToks, just talking, yarning up with youth and giving them a bit of advice in a very gentle, non-judgmental way. So guys, do have a look. If you're on TikTok, look at Auntie TJ.
Is it just TJ?
Yeah, TJ.
Deadly. And you got Gucci.
I have got my own TikTok, which I taught myself, so I'm not that sophisticated.
Oh, you're pretty deadly. Arnie knows where the youth are at.
Yeah, well, but I don't think youth would be that interested. But I like it, and that's what counts. But during lockdown, I taught myself TikTok, and I've got my accounts called Gucci Precious, and it's all about beautiful cats. So there you go. Well,
I can't wait to learn TikTok art. You beat me. Arnie knows it's on TikTok. Yeah. So look, Arnie, I just want to say thank you for coming in here.
My pleasure.
Coming in here on the couch to have a deadly yarn. Your work, your contribution to our people right across this country hasn't gone unnoticed. All of the work that you do and you continue to do, and all of your energy. It's just, in terms of sitting here as a younger person, I can't complain. I've got nothing to complain about. You're still going. Nothing can stop you. And I hope that when I get to your age that I still have that energy to keep on going.
You will.
Thank you, Art.
My pleasure.
I know you've enjoyed this episode. Until next time, bye for now. If you'd like any more info on today's guest, please visit our show notes in the episode description. A big shout out to all you Deadly Mob and allies who continue to listen, watch and support our podcast. Your feedback means the world. You can rate and review the podcast on Apple and Spotify, or even head to our socials and YouTube channel and drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. The Black Magic Woman podcast is produced by Clint Curtis.